Hey, KU fans, welcome back to the KU Sports Hour here at KUsports.com with Benton Smith. I'm Matt Tate, and we have something today to talk about that we don't always have in the month of November. What is it, Benton? You tell the folks.
Well, it's not an election year, so man, I'm drawing a blank. What is it? Oh yeah, KU football won a Big 12 road game. That literally hadn't happened in 13 years, but it happened in Austin, Texas this past weekend. Crazy game. I mean, that game, someone texted me, I got a bunch of texts obviously because people know that I write about this stuff, and when KU rarely has some sort of like national attention grabbing type of game, I usually get kind of flooded with texts, and I texted one of my buddies like, this game was drunk. I mean, that pretty much sums it up. I mean, it was a highly entertaining game, and obviously, the crazy ending and so much great content coming out of it, with Jared Casey being the one who catches the 2-point conversion, and his parents are at the opposite end of the stadium videoing it with their phone, and they're like, don't even know if it's them or not. And I mean, wow, just one of the cooler games really that KU football has had in a long time, I thought.
Carter Stanley's in the crowd watching,
of course he was,
instead of trying to win the game on the field when he almost led KU to a win a couple of years ago down there. I mean, the two games were eerily similar, I thought. I mean, obviously different players and plays, but just when you talk about a game being drunk, that was exactly what kind of described that game when they almost won 2 years ago. And then, of course, a few years before that, they did win. So tough look for Texas, man. You're kind of getting owned by Kansas football right now. And the good news for Kansas is that's a big enough deal for the entire country to stand up and take notice. And everybody is sharing in the laughter and the misery and the piling on of Texas football. If Kansas had beaten Oklahoma State or Baylor or someone like that in a similar fashion, which would have just been as big a game for KU, obviously, because a win is a win at Kansas, and you do not take them for granted. But there is something more about this national sort of, for lack of a better word, laughing stock that Texas has become, and everybody paying attention to that, and everyone wanting to kind of pile on. And so I think KU's gotten a lot of exposure and a lot of extra juice out of that because it was Texas, even though we all know that Texas is in a really bad spot right now. They are not a good football team. And their program really over the last 10 years has not been one to write home about. So the SEC can have them. I think the Big 12 says we'll take Cincinnati or BYU. You can have Texas.
Sound pretty well, maybe. It's just crazy to think about because, I mean, neither one of those programs are obviously the brand that Texas is. And that's why KU's getting all this attention, because Texas football is like a huge national brand, despite what you just mentioned, that they really, I mean, honestly, like since Vince Young has been there, has there been like an amazing Texas team?
So, right.
But yeah, I mean, everybody remembers just a few weeks ago, I don't think it took Texas being in shambles to kind of get everybody's attention, because it's just like, if KU, which is just through this historic stretch of struggling for the past 11 12 years, whatever it's been now, they almost had Oklahoma beat a month ago. And Oklahoma obviously is not not having the issues that Texas has had in recent years. And so people, as that game was going on, were like, oh my God, what is happening, on Twitter and stuff like that, and on national broadcasts. So I think just the KU is competing with these Big 12, soon to be SEC, big national brands. That's grabbing people's attention, and that's probably going to be good, honestly, for recruiting and stuff like that, which is going to be so crucial coming up here in the next several months, and honestly down the line. So
well, I mean, it gives Lance Leipold an opportunity to tell people and look them straight in the eye and say, we're making progress. We can do this here, right? Like, let's not overlook the fact that this was a 57-56 Kansas victory in overtime. Giving up 56 points is not going to be a good recipe for success ever. But you won the game. And And at the end of the day, whether it was 2-0 or 80-85, whatever, nobody cares. It's the result that matters there. So, I think that's the deal, right? He can look at these recruits, he can look at the parents, he can look at donors, where that's a big part of this thing with regard to needing to upgrade that stadium and needing to find the momentum to get people excited about that project and just continuing to move the entire Kansas athletics brand forward. Obviously, football is the biggest part of that. Basketball is doing all it can and then some. Football has to pull its weight. And now they have a coach who can say, well, I don't know what more you want. And I realize we need to win bowl games and we need to win games and be consistent and all those things. But in my first year, I was competitive with Oklahoma and I beat Texas. And it would never be I with Lance.
Right. Yeah.
I hated saying that as I was saying it because it sounded so off, because he's a we, he's an us, he's an our guy. So we beat Texas. We almost beat Oklahoma and competed with them to the bitter end. I mean, those are big things. And regardless of why or how or any of that, those are massive, massive things. Way more than just the result in the win column on a 12-game schedule. So I think that there's some energy that's building around that. I think there's some excitement that's building around that. And I think there's some hope and some belief from people who follow this program that, wow, this thing might actually have a chance. And again, Lance will be the first to tell you, as will a lot of these players, there is still a long, long way to go. But you can't get there without moments like these. And the fact that they're having these moments against the sort of cream of the crop, like you mentioned, you just can't overstate that. I mean, that is massive stuff. 1 second, start talking, Ben.
All right. Well, I mean, like this season was pretty close to, having a 1-11 finish, and a 1-11 finish is not going to kind of generate that buzz or, help you win recruiting battles the way that, I mean, even if they do end up going 2-10 this year, could be a whole lot better than what KU was looking at, just a week ago. Because I mean, the expectations, I think, obviously going into that weekend were that this was going to be another, Big 12 road loss for this football program. And, once you get to that point, you're 2 games away from ending the season on an 11-game losing streak. And I mean, that's no fun for anybody. And it's also not going to, pique anyone's interest for someone you're trying to get to KU, or, as you mentioned, for donors who you're trying to, help drum up some money to make this thing even stronger for, the future of the university and the athletic department. So, I mean, it's a potentially huge win. And right now in the moment, it's a very huge win. And I think we'll see over the next few weeks kind of what its true significance is.
Yeah, well said. And I mean, and let's not overlook the fact that it's huge for this roster too. I mean, anymore in college athletics, you've got to recruit your own guys and re-recruit your own guys and keep them here. And we saw that last offseason when you lose Dejon Terry and Marcus Harris and Karan Prunty to the transfer portal. I mean, I just posted a blog about this. You probably saw it, but on the Kansas Athletics football Twitter account and Facebook, I think, there was an interaction between Kenny Logan and Lance Leipold that was captured on the field after the win against Texas. It's a 20-second video, but there's so much love and admiration and genuine respect between them. I mean, 2 grown men that have known each other 6-7 months.
It's so funny too, because they're so different.
That's right. Yeah.
They could not be more different, like personality wise.
Absolutely. And yet there they are hugging it out and saying, I love you, man. I love you, man. I mean, like, I'll be honest. I mean, the whole point of my blog was I was wondering what Kenny Logan was going to do after perhaps a 1-11 season of just frustrating loss after frustrating loss. I think you still have to wonder. I think you have to wonder that with every player at every program for the rest of the time. That's not changing. Yeah. But that video showed me a lot, man. And it showed me that Kenny Logan is here. He is all the way bought in. He's willing to do what he has to do for this program and for Lance. And they need each other. And they need more like that. So check out the video, check out the blog if you guys haven't seen that yet, because it was that was pretty powerful to me. And it's all part of this equation. I mean, it's easier for Lance Leipold to tell everybody in a Kansas uniform now today, this is where you want to be. Like, we're going to do this thing. It's easier for them to hear that and believe that.
Yeah.
After you just went down and beat Texas for the first time in the history of your program. I mean, at least at Texas. So, I mean, the list is just so long of reasons this was a big win. But, you know, near the top is also just these guys needed this. They needed to feel good about something. I mean, let's look back at that Oklahoma game, right? A very close call, a very emotional loss. I mean, they were heartbroken that they didn't get that one done. The number 3 team in the country, they had them on the ropes. I mean, that took its toll. And then the very next week, you know, hey, okay, let's prove that wasn't a fluke. Well, you lose 55-7 at Oklahoma State, and now everybody, nope, that was a fluke. I mean, you know, so these guys needed that for their own validation in a sense. And now they're right back in the same position. They need to go validate this win by playing well at TCU this coming weekend. Whether that means they win or just are competitive, they have to find a way to make that happen. Otherwise, people are going to dismiss these types of efforts as, whatever, still Kansas, right? So that will be the challenge this week, but I think the challenge becomes a lot easier after a victory because guys are feeling good, they're re-energized, and there's some excitement that can only come after wins. So
and there's a level of confidence that might, you know, but might not have been there. You know, I mean, even if they had lost that game in overtime, you know, I mean, it's still a loss and you're still in that losing streak. So does that deflate you that you're in position to win? So and then you don't come away with it, but you know, they made the plays. And one of the things that I thought was really impressive was just like how confident Leipold was in overtime. Like Texas had all the momentum, right? I mean, that whole second half was just all Longhorns scoring basically. You know, save that OJ Burrows interception real late in the fourth quarter. And I mean, they did not even think twice about, you know, what are we going to do here? You know, that sometimes in overtime games, if you're watching on TV, you'll see a shot of the sideline and coaches look nervous. You know, you can kind of tell they're like, oh God, what do we do?
Right.
You didn't see that from Lance Leipold. He was confident. And I mean, I think the players noticed that too. And obviously he said after the game, he knew what he was going to do. Regardless of what happened in that first overtime, let's just score a touchdown, score 2 points and go home with that win. And I think the players saw that confidence, and obviously Jalen Daniels was playing at a ridiculous level especially for a guy who was the number 3 quarterback a week earlier and supposed to redshirt. So, I mean, it was just a crazy combination of factors that set the stage for a really entertaining ending and something that, you know, obviously could be huge for this team long term.
Yeah, people are going to remember this one for a long time. I mean, you know, people always make fun of other programs that make T-shirts for games and stuff like this. This would almost be one you'd allow. You know, you'd almost be okay with it, and because people are going to talk about it forever, and they're going to remember it forever, and it's historic. It's the first time you've won in Austin. I mean, I'm not advocating it. I'm not making this T-shirt. If there was money to be made, maybe I would think twice, but I don't know. But it just kind of has that feel to it. But you mentioned the confidence, and I think you also mentioned Jalen Daniels, and I think the two go hand in hand. I mean, he's a very confident kid. We saw that last year. Yeah, he was a freshman, and he was thrown out there and running for his life most of the season, but he kept getting up. He kept believing. He kept leading his team. And yeah, they didn't win a game, but for an 18-year-old kid to do what he did last year.
And then, he was 17 for some of those games.
That's right. And then for him to be freaking 19 right now and go through the adversity of, hey, you didn't win the battle. Well, damn, that sucks. I was hoping I would. Last year was fun being a starter. Okay, what can I do to keep this team? What can I do to do my part to make this team better? And, you know, he's got that it factor. He's got that natural leadership quality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, someone else who does as well is Devin Neal. Yep. And no surprise that those two were arguably the two most important players in that upset. I mean, that is a really good sign for KU's future when you have those two back there, and not just because of their talents as players, but because of who they are as people, as teammates, as leaders, and frankly, as ambassadors for this Kansas program. I mean, those are the kinds of guys that Lance Leipold can use in every single way to try to get some momentum for this thing. And so it just happened in that game that it was on the field, and they were both fantastic. But they're going to need a lot more of that, no question about it. The question is obviously, what do you do with Jalen now? I mean, he's played in 4 games, right? So one more, he can't redshirt, and that was the plan as far back as 4 or 5 weeks ago. They announced they wanted to redshirt him, and he was good with it. And so now they have a decision to make, and it's a really tough decision, in my opinion. I don't know that you can go wrong, and I don't know how you figure out which way is right. I mean, it's if he plays in another game, he burns a year, and for what, right? Well, the answer to that could be interesting. If they can play like they did this week, and it's because of him at the helm, maybe you can win one of these last 2 games. Maybe you can win both of these last 2 games. Maybe you just compete and build momentum from that. Either way, you cannot put a price tag on momentum to end the season. However, they could also lose both of these games with or without Jalen, and then you burn the season. So I don't know that there's a right answer. I don't think you can blame anyone for any way they go here. But I'm curious to hear what you think, and then I'll throw my opinion out there too. But I want to know what you think they should do, and I also want to know what you think they're going to do, knowing that maybe no one knows as we're sitting here recording this. They may not even know and have made a decision yet themselves. So there's not a whole lot of pressure on you to be right here because they may not know. But I do want to know your answer to both of those questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously KU is in a pretty fortunate situation because of the COVID year of 2020. Like,
humongous, right?
I mean, that essentially you're in a position where you can kind of pick and choose how you want to use that. I mean, if there's guys that you don't want to use an extra year for, you don't. And if there are guys you do, well, you do it. You make it happen.
Right.
And also, like, that guy Jalen was a true freshman a year ago. And if he redshirted this year, that would make him, a redshirt sophomore next year if you were able to continue that redshirt. So to me, you're talking about either 6 years or 5 years. Like, does Jalen Daniels want to play here for 6 years? Maybe he does. I mean, if he's that forward thinking and like it's like looking to the future to 2024 or whatever it is and beyond, and figuring out when he wants to be playing, then maybe that's part of his big plan. I don't know if it is or not, but to me, because of that COVID year, you have 5 years already. You don't even have to use a redshirt year, So I mean, he's a sophomore on the roster, but technically you could call him a freshman if you didn't use that 2020 year. So I think because he played so well, and this team had so much confidence and kind of rallying around him, and the way they were able to establish that lead and then go win it in overtime. To me, just ride it out with him these next 2 weeks. That Bean obviously has been up and down all year, and Jalen has the benefit, if you're comparing the two, of just having this one game versus the ups and downs of Jason Bean's entire season, right? If Jalen Daniels had played all 9 games, guess what? He probably would have had some ups and downs too.
Bingo.
But all we've seen out of Jalen Daniels is near perfection, and you've seen some of the worst of Jason Bean in some weeks, and he's also had some really good weeks too. He was good against Oklahoma. He was really good against Duke. And that both those guys have their merits. But to me, I think it's going to be interesting based on like what do the coaches think about this quarterback situation long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you think Jalen Daniels is your guy next year, just let's start building towards that.
No question.
Let him play the next 2 weeks.
That's exactly right. And look, like, even if he were going to be a junior, if he burned the red shirt, you'd still get him for the next 2 years. And to be completely frank, like, their goal between now and then should be to recruit a guy better than him.
Yeah.
I mean,
obviously that's always the goal.
Right. Yeah. So that's part of it too. Like, you don't get to just stand pat, right? Like, you're always looking to upgrade your roster at all positions. And so that's great that Jalen could have 2 more years as a starter if he's the guy, or 3 if they use the COVID year, which would be likely, I think. But they also could get momentum and build this thing enough to where they go out and get a big time quarterback that they're like, well, there's our guy. And Jalen, thanks for getting us here. And, you know, maybe you're a veteran and let's see what this young guy has, you know. So there's just so many parts to the equation there that aren't bad. They're just facts. And so I'm 100% in agreement with you. I think you'd be crazy to not ride this wave. Right. And they could go down and lose to TCU 31-0 with Jalen Daniels at quarterback, and it would still have been a good decision because you have to see what you can make of this. You have to see what comes of it. You have to see, is this a moment? Because look, like when Todd Reesing pulled his red shirt against Colorado in that game, right? No one knew he was going to be Todd Reesing, a freaking record holder in every major category of passing in the program's history, and you know, lead to an Orange Bowl and be in the Heisman conversation and all that. No one knew that, you know, but it was important that after he sparked it, and you know, they rode with him after that, and they let him. Let's see what you got. Let's see if there's more where that came from. And Jalen's different because, you know, Todd had never played to that point. Jalen started all last year, but does anyone count last year at all for anything? I mean, for one, like you said, he was a 17-year-old freshman when he started his first game.
The O-line was horrible.
Yeah, historically bad.
Yeah, he was constantly getting hit. I mean, he had that game against Oklahoma where he got sacked 9 times.
Right.
I mean, that guy had no chance of succeeding in that situation, between like the way the offense was going, the coaching infrastructure, the poor O-line. Like nobody as a freshman would have looked good last year in that situation.
Totally right. So yeah, I mean, it's a very, even though they're different and no one wants to pretend to compare Todd Reesing to Jalen Daniels. No one is doing that. I'm going to say it again. No one is doing that. But in terms of momentum and in terms of just, you never know when that moment's going to hit. That is a significant moment in a rebuild or a turnaround or sparking something. You just never know. And so to turn your head to it, to kind of just dismiss it would be maybe a fatal flaw. I just don't think it would be a wise move. So I fully expect him to be the starting quarterback at TCU this weekend, and obviously you do as well. And then where it goes. But I think you can only make good decisions up to that. And look, you'd probably have to argue that there have not been very many more confident quarterbacks taking the field for Kansas in the past decade than Jalen Daniels, Jalen Wilson. Crossover season. It happened. Then Jalen Daniels will be when he starts against TCU, if that's what happens. I mean, that is a dude who just beat Texas on the road. You are not more confident than that. So I think that's exciting to think about what that could lead to. And obviously they've got a lot to take care of before they even can pretend to win 2 Big 12 road games in a row. But the opportunity's there now, and this TCU team is 4-6 overall. They're not necessarily a juggernaut. They did beat Baylor, right?
They did. I was just looking at their schedule before we got started. You know,
you've got to expect, and I think you looked this up before we hit record too, the 22 point favorite, right? So you got to expect that this is going to be another monster challenge, and obviously TCU will not take Kansas lightly. They know, like, even though Texas is trash, TCU, like, people still don't go into Texas and win very often. So KU obviously is going to be somebody that we need to take serious, and we need to show up and play our best. But you're getting the idea all of a sudden. And look, let's talk about the O-line real quick. I mean, you jumped on it pretty early this season. I mean, even from week 1 to week 2, and even in that first month, about their improvement that they were showing, because they were pretty bad in the opener. But man, they have been so good in terms of steadily improving and continually making strides toward being a better unit, better individually. They're making fewer mistakes. They've just become something that this team can really rely on, and that's been a huge part of the reason that that Devin Neal's having the year that he's having. Which also is not to be overlooked. I mean, I think he's at 640 some yards. That's pretty darn good, man.
And remember, he didn't start the first 3 games, right?
Right.
He was the backup, and I think he had 1 carry in the opener, and
right?
then was just like gradually kind of becoming the second string guy there for the first few weeks, and it also became evident in those first few weeks that he was the best running back on the team, and that's probably one of the reasons Felton Gardner left.
Sure.
Because I think that was about to flip, who was going to be the starting running back, and it got a whole lot easier to flip when Felton Gardner left, and now here's Devin Neal.
You want to run the ball? Okay.
Yeah. Worked out well for everybody, I think. So
yeah, and he needed the time too. Like he didn't look like the Devin Neal that was a 4-star recruit offered by everybody. I mean, those first couple of weeks, he was still figuring it out, and he looked a little timid, and he didn't run with the same hard-nosed, tough style that he ran throughout high school and that he's running with now. So, it's not like they blew that either. I mean, he's become a much better back over the course of the season, and to think about what he can do in his career here is pretty damn cool. I mean, a Lawrence kid who loves this town and this university now as much as anyone I've known, especially that early in their career. To think, what it means to him and what he's going to make it mean to all of his teammates as a leader, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to think about. And for those who don't know him, I mean, we've been around him plenty. He's an A+ kid, man. I mean, just A+ all the way around. And a guy you like to see good things happen to. So it will be also really interesting to see how that continues, if the line continues to play well, and if he continues to really control games, because that's what he did at Texas. They had no answer for Devin Neal, and he had a monster night.
Also, I was about to say one of the best interviews out of any KU athlete I can remember in the past, 7 or 8 years, or however long I've been helping out with our KU coverage here. So
shout out Shane Jackson for prepping him, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All those Lawrence High interviews that Shane
was hard on him those 4 years. He got him ready for the big time.
So let's get into the next 2 games real quick. I mean, I know people are starting to get excited again and looking at these. Like I said, West Virginia, TCU, and Texas. Those are they're directly above Kansas in the standings. I think they all have 2 Big 12 wins, and man, you can't ask for a much better opportunity than that if you're KU. Like you got your lumps out of the way. You played the powerhouse programs in the conference. You made it through that, and now you get the 3 teams that are down there at the bottom with you to finish the season. You beat one of them. Can you go beat the next 2? I mean, again, I know that sounds crazy, and I know that people are going to just, say, no, it can't happen. It can't happen. No way. And that's probably correct. I mean, the overwhelming odds are that that's not going to happen. But how crazy is it to think that they could finish this thing with another win or 2? And if they do, think about the momentum that would create. It's almost hard to even put your mind around. I mean, because we've just not seen it in so long. Yeah, but I mean, crazy to think they could do it.
I mean, I think that it would take a lot of things happening. I think it would take the defense making another significant step because, as you mentioned, 56 points is not ideal. And the defense has, struggled all year. The thing that made them able to get by at Texas was they were getting those takeaways. Yep. I mean, Kyron Johnson was a man possessed coming off the edge. Jacoby Bryant read that for that pick 6 to end the second quarter. It seemed like a throw that never should have happened, but credit to him, like he saw it coming and he took off. And I mean, that might have been the biggest play in the game, or what, there were a lot of big plays in that game. That was one of the most important ones.
Well, it just made Texas go all the way to the end to come back, right? If that's a 2-touchdown game at halftime, Texas may have the thing tied up by the end of the third or early in the fourth, and then it's a totally different momentum thing and all that. But yeah, the fact that he jumped that route and was able to take it to the house. I mean, and all of a sudden now you hung 35 in the first half. You hadn't scored that all year in a whole game. I mean, that's crazy. So monster play. And yeah, I mean, like part of the problem at the end too was just these guys being so young and not being used to winning, right? I mean, when Burrows picks that pass off with 1:10 left in the end zone, that's got to be game over. It just has to be.
Yeah, yeah.
And it wasn't.
Texas was lucky that it had those 3 timeouts. Well, maybe not lucky, but Texas had its 3 timeouts and got its stops. But to your point, I mean, that's where you really have to kind of win that game.
Totally.
And KU found a way regardless. But Texas came through and got those stops, used those timeouts, and got the ball back, which didn't seem like it was going to happen. Just the way that but momentum kept swinging back and forth throughout that fourth quarter. And I mean, what an absolutely drunk game that was.
Coming back to that, it's fair.
Yeah.
That's the only way to describe it. I like that a lot. And then obviously, we've got to talk a little bit about the story of the millennium for this program and for college football in general. I mean, the video sent out by Jared Casey's brother, over 1 million views on Twitter alone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to go to 2-3 million before it's done. I'm sure it'll be watched for years to come, not even just by Kansas fans. That was what struck me about it. I mean, I saw dozens and dozens of different fan bases represented in the replies to that thing. Hey, I'm a Wisconsin fan, but this was awesome. Hey, I'm a K-State fan, but I loved this. I mean, like, it was incredible. I think Missouri fans were in there, enjoying that raw emotion and mom and dad losing their minds and look, like, parents are proud, right? Like, anybody's mom and dad's going to be excited if their kid catches a game-winning pass or makes a game-winning shot or whatever. That's what parents do. But the story behind this one is just so much more remarkable and makes it all the better because it's just, this is a dude who doesn't play. I mean, like,
right.
I was talking to somebody who was around when he first came to KU and wanted to walk on, and they were very honest with him about the opportunity, and we can't give you any money, you're going to be low man on the totem pole, there's nothing for you here really, but you're a Kansas kid, and if you want to do this, let's do it. And he said, yeah, I love KU, that's really all I care about, I'll do whatever, and I just want to be there. And fast forward to now, holy crap, how did that happen?
I mean, you could tell that he loved KU when he said after the game that he vividly remembered sitting in his parents' van listening to Kerry Meyer catch the touchdown pass against Missouri in 2008. So I mean, the kid was 5 at that point, listening to it on the radio, full blast. He said,
"Yeah, I love the video. I love the video."
Yeah. So I mean, that's a KU fan for you, for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, just a remarkable story, and yet again, kind of overlooked in that story, and rightfully so. I mean, fun moment for the family, incredible moment for the player, great moment for the program. But I think what is getting overlooked in that moment is one hell of a play by Jalen Daniels, because that thing was blown up almost at the snap, and
he was running for his life pretty quickly because Texas had a good pressure dialed up. Yeah,
they're not going to get this. That's just they came close, and then he makes a play and hits him right in the hands. And credit to Casey for getting big with his hands and asking for the ball. I mean, my God, man, it would have been real easy to just kind of accidentally get covered or be a little timid there. I mean, that's a big moment. Not him.
Or drop the ball because it's such a big moment and your adrenaline is through the sky. So,
yeah, right.
Yeah,
it was wild. I mean, just a perfect ending to that particular game, I would have to say. I mean, he then gets trucked by Jeremy Webb in a celebration, drops the ball. I think Webb went back and got the ball for him, right? Like, I mean, who knows? I'm sure he ended up with the ball. I don't know how that works, but just a remarkable scene, man. And they found a way. So it'll be really interesting. Any final thoughts on Kansas 57, Texas 56 before we get out of here? What else would you need to say about this season, this program? Let's not forget too that the win, for all those so inclined to follow things in Las Vegas, the win did pay the over for Kansas football this year on win total. You got it at 1 or 1.5. It is now 2, and you won your bet. Another big part of the equation. Not the biggest in terms of from KU's perspective, but from a lot of fans' perspective, even bigger. That's pretty massive. I think a lot of people thought 2 was going to happen, and it was this close to maybe not. So now they got a chance at 3 or 4. Final thoughts, Benton. Send us home.
Yeah, I think just it's as they went through that 8-game stretch, and mostly we're getting blown out and had that one close call against Oklahoma. You kept hearing coaches talk about the progress that they're seeing, and I mean, they were the thing I liked about the way that this coaching staff approached it is they didn't try to fabricate anything when talking about what they were seeing. They were like brutally honest, like, the scoreboard has not been good, but I see these tiny things happening, and maybe one or two plays, but those things are important, and those are the things we have to build upon. And I mean, they easily could have lost the players through that stretch,
right? Right.
But they didn't. They kept finding the right things to emphasize, and got that buy-in that they needed to make this one happen. Because if the players started tuning them out, then this would not have happened. This team has been together all year, and credit to them. And I mean, they deserved that win, because it was not easy to go through that 8-game losing streak, and mostly, getting blown out week after week. So I think that shows you kind of the belief they have in the coaching staff, and also just the belief they have in each other as teammates. So they did an incredible job to kind of keep that resolve and get to this point and make that possible, when a lot of people, didn't think it was.
Yeah, very well said. That's a great way to end it, because you're right. I mean, the score is what it is, but you never saw these guys quit in any of those games. I mean, even the worst of the worst beatings on the scoreboard, they kept fighting. And I mean, against all reason, right? Like everyone in the world saying, why are you trying so hard still? This one's over. Well, that's why they are trying to set the foundation for something like what they did at Texas, and like future years that they believe they'll have more wins and more success. So it has to start there. And it's incredible that it has, and they deserve a lot of credit for it, like you said. But again, I think this week's massive, man. I mean, I think you have to validate it. You have to follow it up with something that's going to convince people that was not a fluke, and that this is the start of something, even if it's the very, very tip of it, the very small beginning of something. That's all people want to know. They want to know that this thing is in the right direction. And if you can go compete and play well at TCU, win or lose, you might convince them. And then who knows, man? I mean, like I tweeted this too. I mean, within hours of that win over Texas, there was a tweet out from Kansas Athletics saying it's buy one, get one free for the West Virginia game. I mean, they were that fast in moving to capitalize on the victory to try to fill their stadium. I mean, this is an administration and a support staff that understands what the challenge is, and that they've got to figure out ways to entice people to get to the stadium until the product on the field does that. And buy one, get one free, 2 tickets for $20. I mean, that's pretty good right there. That's a sign that the lights are on in the castle, and that they understand, hey, let's capitalize however we can. So, small steps are being taken on that side of it too. And that's just as significant.
I'm guessing they were ready to have that deal prepared, to offer regardless of what happened, but it becomes a lot more enticing.
There you go.
When you piqued everybody's interest with an overtime win at Texas.
That's right. You might not have promoted it late Saturday night.
Yeah, exactly.
You might have waited till Monday, or
maybe,
or this Thursday.
Or next week.
Yeah, right. You're probably right. They were planning to do something like that, but the ability to spring into action and say, hey, look, you just watched this win. Well, you want to come watch one in person? We got a chance now. Let's see what happens. For Ben Smith, I'm Matt Tate. That's the KU Sports Hour for today. A rare full KU Sports Hour of Kansas football in November. Who'd have thunk it?
It's a unicorn podcast.
We'll talk to you guys next time. We'll throw some basketball in there, of course, but this had to be all football, because that was a massive win. KU wins at 57-56 over Texas in overtime in Austin, and now we'll play TCU on Saturday at 3 p.m. Benton will be there, ready to chronicle all of the action. Will you? If you don't go, that's fine. Thanks for checking out KU Sports Hour. We'll talk to you guys again real soon.